The world of magic doesn't end with the turning of a page. Love rises and falls anew, forbidden like poison or blazing like a phoenix's flame. The heroes we thought we knew uncover their hearts once more. So step into the enchantment of emotion and welcome to a world where love is written anew. The storm over Hogwarts had rolled in like a dark thought, heavy and persistent, rattling the windows of the rebuilt castle. Harry Potter stood alone in the corridor outside the headmaster's office, listening to the thunder rumble like an impatient giant. It was late, nearly midnight, and he should have been home at Grimmauld Place. But something had pulled him back to the school tonight, something he couldn't quite name. Professor McGonagall had allowed him inside graciously, though with puzzled eyes. "I've felt, disturbance," Harry had admitted, not sure how to put it into words. She had nodded once, the sort of nod that suggested she understood far more than she let on, and let him pass. Now Harry pushed open the door to the office, expecting the usual hush of sleeping portraits, the faint whirring of instruments, the familiar sense of Dumbledore's lingering presence. Instead, he felt something else, a tremor in the air, a pull. It led him to an old wooden chest beneath one of the dusty bookshelves, a chest with deep grooves and a silver clasp bearing a familiar crest. A serpent curled protectively around a lily. Harry froze. He had seen that symbol only once before, in a memory when Snape had pressed his wand to his temple and drawn out a single shimmering thread. Why would such a symbol be here? "Because he meant it to be found," murmured a portrait overhead, Phineas Nigellus Black, sounding uncommonly solemn. Dumbledore sealed that box with a spell only one person could open. Harry swallowed. "Me? You are unusually slow today," the portrait huffed, then fell silent, as if recognizing the gravity of the moment. Harry knelt, hands trembling slightly as he touched the clasp. Warm, as if someone had just left it there. The serpent's silver coil shifted and unlatched itself without a sound. Inside rested a sealed scroll of thick parchment, bound with black ribbon and stamped with green wax. A familiar handwriting marked the outside in firm, unfussy strokes. "For Potter." The breath caught in Harry's throat. His fingers hovered over the scroll but didn't touch it. Not yet. Not until he was ready for whatever was inside. He remembered Snape lying on the floor of the shrieking shack, pale and fading, his dark eyes fixed on Harry with a quiet urgency Harry hadn't understood then. He remembered how Snape's final memories had reshaped everything. His past, his choices, his pain. He remembered Lily's eyes staring back at him, and the gentleness that had flickered in Snape's own in those last seconds. Harry drew a slow breath and opened the scroll. Ink unfurled across the parchment, forming lines as though being written in real time. A whisper rose with it, soft yet distinct, like a voice carried across a long corridor. "Potter, if you are reading this, then the headmaster saw fit to preserve my message. Whether that speaks to her wisdom or her folly, I leave to your judgment." Harry's heart clenched. The voice didn't sound spoken, nor imagined. Something in the magic made it feel present, immediate. Snape's tone, clipped, impatient, and yet weary, echoed around him. "I leave behind matters unfinished, matters that concern you more than anyone. Go to the place where the truth was first revealed to you. There, you will find what remains of my final duty." The writing paused, as if Snape were considering something reluctantly. And Potter, do not come alone. The ink faded, leaving only the faint scent of rosemary and smoke behind. Harry stared at the parchment, pulse racing. The place where the truth was first revealed. The pensive, the memories, or the shrieking shack. A cold wind slipped across the room, rustling the curtains through the windows were shut. The portraits stirred uneasily. Harry felt the pull again, a subtle tug, like a hand brushing his shoulder. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a message. It felt more like an echo, a presence. And Harry couldn't shake the sense that he was no longer alone in the room. The candles flickered, the air tightened, and suddenly Harry felt it, a tremor of magic that reminded him of the moment Snape's memories had washed over him. Only now the sensation was sharper, focused, almost conscious. "Snape," Harry whispered, before he could think better of it. Silence. Then, faintly, so faintly he almost doubted it, a whisper brushed the back of his mind. Not words, not yet, but a feeling. Recognition. Harry staggered back, heart pounding. The scroll slipped from his hands, landing softly on the carpet. Snape's spirit, or something of him, was still here, bound, waiting. And whatever tied him to this world had just reached out to Harry. Outside, thunder cracked like a warning. Inside the office, Harry steadied himself, forcing his breath calm. This was the beginning. He could sense it, a path unfurling, one that would lead him back into Snape's past, into secrets left to rot in the dark, into emotions neither of them had ever dared voice. Harry tightened his grip on the scroll. Whatever Snape had left behind, whatever final duty remained, Harry would follow it, even if it meant facing the man he had never truly understood, even if it meant discovering why Snape's spirit had called to him. The next morning broke with an unsettling stillness, a hush that seemed to coat the stones of Hogwarts in a thin film of expectation. Harry had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the scroll unfurling again, the green wax cracking open, Snape's words forming out of nothing, as though pulled from shadow. Go to the place where the truth was first revealed to you. The shrieking shack. Harry stood now at the edge of the forbidden forest, cloak billowing behind him as a cool wind pressed through the trees. Hogsmeade lay quiet in the distance, the village still half asleep under the soft glow of morning. The shack rose ahead, crooked, leaning, abandoned, a skeleton house that still carried the echo of the war. He stepped closer, boots crunching on frosted grass, and the memory hit him with unnerving clarity. Snape collapsing, blood staining the warped floor, eyes locked on his. And Harry, too stunned to understand that he was witnessing the end of something enormous and tragic and unfinished. Now, years later, the doorway yawned open like a throat swallowing light. Right then, Harry muttered to himself, fingers brushing his wand. You said not to come alone. He pushed the door gently. It swung inward with a low groan. Inside, the shack was exactly as he remembered. Splintered floorboards, a sagging ceiling, the faint smell of damp and time. But now there was something else. A soft glow pulsing in the far corner, like moonlight trapped in a jar. Harry approached slowly, wand aloft. As he neared the glow, the air thickened, warm and electric. And then he saw it. A vial, small, delicate, crystalline, filled with swirling silver mist. A memory. Snape's memory. But it wasn't like the others he had seen. This one moved with purpose, almost rhythmically, forming shapes that dissolved before his eyes could catch them. Harry felt a pulse, not his heartbeat, but something deeper, like magic attuned to him alone. He reached out, fingertips brushing the vial. The shack trembled. Then, "Potter!" A voice, sharp as a blade, drawn quietly in the dark. Harry spun around, heart slamming in his chest. The voice wasn't in the room. It was inside him. Not a memory speaking, not an echo. Something other. "Snape!" Harry whispered. A cold ripple brushed his cheek like a passing breath. A whisper answered, faint but unmistakable. "Closer." Harry swallowed hard. "What do you want me to see?" The room answered by dimming. Shadows stretched along the walls, gathering like ink until everything blurred. Only the vial remained clear. The memory swelled within it, silver spirals expanding, brightening, beckoning. Harry knew the sensation, the pull of a pensive. But this was stronger, more insistent, as though Snape's magic, or whatever remained of it, recognized only one person. Him. The vial rose into the air, spinning slowly. Light wrapped around Harry's wrist, warm as breath, guiding him forward. He let the magic take him. The world dropped away. He fell softly into a corridor lit by torchlight. Hogwarts, decades earlier. Students passed by, blurred and indistinct, as though the memory itself had grown hazy with age. But ahead, a young Severus Snape stood alone near the potions classroom doorway, his thin frame rigid, hands clenched, eyes cold and distant. Harry stepped closer. "Snape!" The memory Snape didn't react. Of course he wouldn't. Memories had rules. They didn't speak to you. They didn't change. But this one felt different. As Harry reached Snape's side, the boy's head lifted suddenly, too suddenly. His eyes, black and reflective, snapped directly to Harry, locking onto him as though he could truly see him. Harry froze. That wasn't normal. Snape's young face didn't soften, but something flickered within it. Awareness, sharp and swift, like a flame catching. Then the boy spoke, clearly, directly to him. "You're late." Harry stumbled back. "You can see me? You wouldn't be here if I couldn't." The boy's voice carried an echo, layered with a deeper, older tone. The voice Harry had heard in Dumbledore's office. The adult Snape. "This memory is not merely memory, Potter. It is anchor." Harry's breath caught. Anchor to what? To me. The corridor warped softly around them, the edges blurring like a painting left in rain. Snape's younger form stood steady, gaze unblinking, impossibly alive for something that shouldn't be alive. Harry swallowed, heart tight. "Snape, are you really—" "A fragment," the voice corrected, "bound by a debt that should have ended with my life, yet did not." The torches flickered wildly, sparks scattering like frightened fireflies. Harry steadied himself. "What debt?" "You sought the truth," Snape said, his younger face unreadable. "But truth has consequence. There are pieces you were never meant to see, and pieces I never meant to leave behind." The corridor darkened once more, shadows seeping across the floor like ink drawn toward the two of them. Harry stepped forward instinctively. "Tell me how to release you." Snape's expression didn't shift, but his voice did, softer, a rare quiet threading through the sharpness. "You would help me? After everything?" Harry felt his throat tighten. "You saved me. More times than I ever realized. If something of you is still here, still trapped, then I won't leave you to face it alone." For a moment, a fragile, flickering moment, Snape's young face showed something Harry recognized only from that final night: vulnerability, worn thin with exhaustion. "You are remarkably foolish," Snape murmured, "but not wrong." The corridor shuddered. Cracks spidered along the stone floor, light pouring through them like molten silver. Snape lifted a hand, not the boy's hand, but a transparent overlay of the man he had been, reaching toward Harry. Not touching, not quite, but close enough that Harry felt warmth brush his skin. "This is the first step," Snape said. "There will be others, harder ones." Harry nodded. "I'm not stopping." A pause, a soft exhale. "Then neither am I." The world blazed white. Harry jolted back into the shrieking shack, stumbling as the memory vial dimmed and fell into his palm. His pulse hammered in his ears. The shack felt colder now, as though something had stirred and left the air unsteady. But he wasn't alone. He felt it. A presence, faint yet perceptible, lingering like an unfinished sentence. Snape. Harry closed his fingers around the vial, breath uneven but steady. This wasn't just a mystery. It was a path leading him deeper into Snape's past, and towards something he felt building between them, quiet but certain, like a flame coaxed gently to life. And Harry knew, whatever waited in the next memory, it would draw him even closer. The morning had deepened into a pale, shifting gold by the time Harry stepped out of the shrieking shack, the memory vial warm against his palm. The air outside felt sharper, as though the world itself sensed that something old and restless had begun to stir. Harry drew his cloak tighter, took a long breath, and started toward Hogwarts. With each step, that faint presence remained beside him. Not a voice, not a shadow, but a feeling. A quiet awareness brushing the edge of his mind, as if Snape walked just out of sight. It made Harry move faster, heart thudding with a mixture of unease and something else. Something he didn't dare name yet. By the time he reached the castle, students were flooding the corridors, chattering brightly about essays and Quidditch matches. None noticed him slip through the more secluded passages leading to the headmaster's office. He wasn't sure why he'd come here instinctively, except that the air itself tugged him in this direction, as though the castle knew its own secrets and wished them uncovered. McGonagall waited inside, perched stiffly behind her desk. Her sharp gaze swept to the vial in Harry's hand. "So," she said, in a voice both weary and sharpened with recognition, "he left more behind than memories." Harry nodded, stepping forward. "It wasn't just a recording. Snape spoke to me. Not the memory. Him. A part of him. Something still bound here." McGonagall's lips pressed together in a thin, thoughtful line. A magical echo, perhaps, or the remnants of a vow. Her eyes softened, only slightly. Severus was a man of bindings, promises that cost him dearly. Harry hesitated, fingers tightening around the vial. He said, "This is the first step, that there would be others. And you intend to follow them." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Harry answered. Something flickered in the headmistress's eyes. Pride, concern, and a sadness she masked too carefully to be accidental. She rose, robes whispering around her, and gestured toward the shelves behind her. "Then you should see what he left." From between two ancient volumes, she withdrew a narrow wooden box. No serpent, no lily, no crest this time. only a simple etching on the lid, a single, sharp-stroked letter. Harry felt the presence inside him tighten, like breath caught in the throat of something not fully living. He entrusted this to Albus long before the war, McGonagall said. Said it was to be given only if certain circumstances unfolded. She set the box down gently. I believe they have. The box was surprisingly light in Harry's hands, the wood smooth from age. He lifted the lid. Inside lay a sliver of obsidian, mirror-like, narrow and etched with runes so old they pulsed faintly beneath his fingertips. The moment he touched it, the runes flared softly, and the air changed. The room dimmed, shadows stretching as though drawn toward the artifact. Harry felt a warmth at his back, not physical, but undeniably real. The sense of being watched, not in warning, but in expectation. Snape. The mirror slate shimmered, then flooded with silver light that formed into words. The second memory awaits where the past was rewritten. Harry's breath stilled. That could mean the astronomy tower, or the place Snape killed Dumbledore, or... A whisper brushed his ear, quiet as falling ash. Not that, Snape murmured, voice threaded with something that felt like weary impatience. The place where you rewrote me. Harry stiffened. The pensive. McGonagall blinked. The pensive? Why would he... But she stopped. Of course. She understood. The pensive was where Harry had first seen the truth of Snape. The truth that shattered the hatred between them. The truth that revealed every sacrifice, every wound, every secret Snape had guarded alone. Harry closed the box, slipping the obsidian shard into his pocket as he stood. I have to go. Yes, McGonagall said quietly. You do. The journey to the old defense against the dark arts classroom felt strangely familiar, like walking toward an echo of his younger self. The corridors here carried memories he hadn't stepped into in years. The sight of the empty room made him pause, letting the ghosts of the past whisper through the dust. The pensive sat atop a stone pedestal, just as it once had, its surface dull with disuse. Yet the moment Harry stepped closer, it shimmered faintly, as though waking from sleep. The silver glow inside rippled expectantly, sensing the vial he carried. Harry drew in a breath. All right then, show me. He poured the swirl's memory into the pensive. The liquid silver brightened, the room trembling lightly as though bracing itself. Harry bent forward, touched the surface, and fell. He landed in darkness. No corridor, no classroom, only a vast, shadowed expanse. The air buzzed faintly, humming with broken strands of memory. Slowly, shapes emerged. Bookshelves, long corridors of them, stretching endlessly into the void. Harry recognized this place instantly. Snape's mind, or the fragments of it. A figure stepped out from between the shelves. The man himself, not the teenage version Harry had seen earlier. Tall, sharp, dressed in flowing black that stirred without any wind. His expression was cool, but his eyes, they held something new, something almost alive. You came, Snape said, voice no longer layered or distorted, as though this form was closer to the real Snape than any Harry had seen since the war. Harry swallowed. You asked me to. A faint arch of the eyebrow, familiar, infuriating, strangely comforting. I did, Snape admitted, though I half expected you to ignore it out of Gryffindor stubbornness. Harry felt the corners of his mouth twitch. You knew I wouldn't. Snape's gaze sharpened, a flicker of something unreadable passing through it. Yes, he murmured. I did. He stepped closer. The shadows parted around him as if reluctant to touch him. This place, he continued, gesturing to the infinite shelves, is a construct. The remains of what I left behind, fragments, emotions, truths unfinished. You said there's a debt, Harry pressed. A binding. Why? What is it? Snape's expression tightened, not with anger, but with the fragile hesitation of someone standing at the edge of something long buried. You saw my memories once, he said softly, but not all of them. Not the ones I withheld, not the ones that concerned you. Harry's heart stumbled. Me? A shadow moved behind Snape, or maybe it was Snape whose shadow moved independently, stretching toward Harry like a reaching hand. You cannot free me without seeing them, Snape said, and you cannot see them without accepting the consequences. Harry stepped forward. Whatever they are, I'll face them. Snape's eyes held his, dark and deep as a midnight pool. Be careful what you offer, Potter. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Some truths bind as tightly as any curse. Harry didn't look away. Then show me. The shelves trembled. A memory stirred. Snape lifted a hand, and for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat, his fingers brushed Harry's. A spark leapt between them, startling, warm, alive. Harry drew a sharp breath. Snape's eyelids flickered as though the touch surprised him too, and affected him more deeply than he intended. Then the shadows peeled open, revealing the second memory waiting within the dark. And Harry stepped forward, Snape at his side, as the true story began to unfold. The memory took shape slowly, like ink blooming through parchment. Shadows folded back, revealing a narrow stone bridge suspended over a vast, swirling abyss. The air hummed with the pressure of magic, so old and deep it seemed carved from time itself. Harry steadied his breathing as he stepped onto the bridge, Snape's presence a few strides ahead, his silhouette stark against the silvery dark. Where are we? Harry asked, though the place tugged at some distant familiarity. Snape didn't turn. A crossroads of thought, not a location, but a boundary. His voice was smoother here, almost weightless, as though freed from the constraints of a living throat. It is where memories lock themselves away when a wizard refuses to face them. Harry glanced over the edge. The abyss churned with fragments of glimmers, images he couldn't quite make out. Your memories? Snape inclined his head, a gesture both curt and strangely vulnerable. These are the ones I did not choose to show you. The memories that were too intrusive, too revealing, too personal. Harry's pulse quickened. What could Snape have possibly hidden that he hadn't already been forced to reveal in the war? His past was a tapestry of tragedy. Lily, the Death Eaters, Dumbledore, the double life that carved him into a blade too sharp for his own heart. Snape stopped at the center of the bridge. The shadows around him grew still, as though waiting. He lifted one hand, fingers splayed. A shard of silver light rose from the abyss, trembling before their eyes. Do you know, Snape said quietly, why I sought you out in my final moments? Harry swallowed. I thought, because you needed me to take your memories. A convenient explanation, Snape murmured, eyes narrowing slightly. But not the truth. The shard brightened until its glow cast wavering reflections across Snape's pale face. Harry took a hesitant step closer, feeling the warmth of the memory on his skin. What is that? He asked. Snape's jaw tightened. A memory of mine. One I locked away long ago. He paused, gaze fixed on Harry with an intensity that made the air between them taut. A memory about you. Harry's breath caught. Snape extended his hand toward the shard. Prepare yourself, Potter. You may find this disquieting. The light shattered inward like a closing flower, pulling them both into its heart. Harry hit the ground with a soft thud. Grass brushed his palms. He blinked rapidly as the scene sharpened. A glen near the edge of the forbidden forest, moonlit and silent. The air was thick with summer warmth, crickets humming softly among the trees. And on the far side of the glen stood Snape, younger than the man Harry knew, older than the student Harry had seen in the first memory. His robes were travel-worn, hair tied back loosely, shadows under his eyes like bruises carved by sleepless nights. He clutched something tightly in one hand, a letter. Harry stepped closer. When was this? Snape, the Snape from the memory, not the one beside Harry, unfolded the letter. His hands trembled only slightly, but enough that Harry noticed. The writing glinted faintly in the moonlight. Harry recognized his own name. This was the night I learned you had survived the graveyard, Snape said, appearing beside Harry like a dark flame taking shape. His voice was thin, threaded with something raw. After the Triwizard Tournament. Harry stared at him. You came here alone? Snape nodded once. Dumbledore's instructions were brief. Harry lives. Those were the only words I received. Memory Snape crumpled the letter in his fist, chest rising with an unsteady breath. Harry watched, stunned, as Snape's younger self pressed a hand hard against his eyes, shoulders shaking in a way that seemed almost painful to witness. He was relieved, Snape said, voice low. Relief is a dangerous emotion. It exposes more than fear ever could. Harry turned sharply. You were relieved I was alive? Why? Snape's lips thinned, but he didn't look away. Because the alternative was unacceptable. His tone darkened. I had grown accustomed to your continued existence. Harry blinked, startled by the odd delicacy of the phrasing. Snape had a remarkable talent for burying sentiment beneath layers of disdain. Yet here, the words trembled with something that felt too human to ignore. Memory Snape lowered his hand. His expression was tight, anguished, not simply from the strain of spying or the weight of war. Something else haunted his features, something achingly familiar to Harry, the fear of losing someone without ever having said what mattered. Harry stepped toward him, his chest aching. Snape, why did you hide this from me? Snape's shadowed eyes fixed on him, unreadable. Because you would not have understood it then. And now, Harry pressed. A long silence. Then, I do not know, Snape admitted, each word sounding carved from truth he'd spent years avoiding. But you insisted on this path. You insisted on chasing the pieces I left behind. Harry exhaled slowly. The memory shifted, moonlight rippling over the grass. Memory Snape sank to his knees, shoulders bowed, gripping a handful of earth as though to steady himself from the sheer force of whatever he was feeling. Harry watched him, throat tight. You cared, he whispered. Not a question. Not anymore. Snape closed his eyes. A soft wind stirred the grass. I cared, Snape said finally, voice barely audible. More than I allowed myself to acknowledge. More than was wise. Harry's heartbeat thundered. The confession hovered in the air, fragile and impossible, and heavy with everything unsaid. The younger Snape lifted his head, moonlight catching the glint of unshed tears. Harry felt something break open inside his chest. He reached instinctively towards Snape, the real one, but before his hand could touch the sleeve of Snape's robe, the memory convulsed. Light fractured. The glen dissolved around them, pulled apart by rising shadows. Snape's expression darkened. The boundary is destabilizing. We must leave this one. Harry hesitated, the weight of the moment lingering like a bruise. Snape, is this why you're bound here? Because of me? Snape's jaw flexed. He looked away. Partially. Then what's the rest? A shadow surged beneath their feet. Snape seized Harry's wrist, the shock of warmth startling in its intensity, and pulled him back toward the bridge. We will reach that truth, Snape said hoarsely. But not yet. The memory shattered entirely. They stumbled onto the spectral bridge once more, the abyss churning with renewed unrest. Snape released Harry abruptly, as though he had forgotten he was still gripping him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Snape drew himself up, cloak flaring like dark wings. The next memory lies deeper still, he said, if you choose to continue. Harry met his gaze, breath steadying. I'm not going anywhere. Something flickered in Snape's eyes. Not irritation, not disbelief, but a fragile, dangerous spark of acknowledgement. Very well, he murmured. The shadows parted before them, revealing the path to the third memory, and Harry followed, closer now than before, closer than either dared admit. The bridge dissolved beneath their feet like mist drawn away by a rising wind. Harry braced himself, expecting another surge of darkness, another plunge into memory. But instead, he stepped into a room so familiar that for a moment he forgot he was standing inside someone else's mind. It was the old potions classroom. Not the bright, refurbished one students used now, but the cold, dim stone chamber Harry had known as a teenager. Dust filled the air in lazy spirals. Cabinets rattled softly as if stirred by breath alone. The torches burned with greenish flame, casting the room in strange shifting shadows. Harry felt Snape appear behind him, more sensed than heard, his presence a swirl of calm and tension. This is, Harry murmured. Yes, Snape replied quietly. A classroom, a memory I locked away with care. Harry frowned. Why this place? We were never... He hesitated. They both knew what he had been about to say. Never close. Snape moved past him, the hem of his robes brushing the stone with a whisper. This is not about lessons, he said. Not the sort you remember, at least. Harry watched as Snape approached the old desk at the front of the room. The desk from which he had glared, stalked, and scolded his way through every class. Snape's fingers hovered above its surface, not quite touching. For the first time, Harry wondered what the desk had meant to him. A flicker of light drew Harry's attention. A younger Harry, 16 years old, sat at a table near the back. He was hunched over a potions book, muttering under his breath with irritation, his hair sticking out in hopeless disarray. The half-blood prince's notes sprawled across the page, brilliant, maddening, irresistible. Harry remembered this night. He had come back to rebrew a potion he had spectacularly failed at earlier that day. Slughorn had been absent, leaving Snape in charge of after-hours practice. Snape had not been pleased. Memory Snape stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching young Harry with the stiff, simmering frustration of a man forced to grade his own handwriting, but unable to admit it. "This memory," Harry said slowly, "is from 6th year." "Yes," Snape replied. "What makes it important?" Snape did not answer. Instead, he gestured for Harry to watch. Young Harry glared down at his simmering cauldron. "I don't see why I have to redo this," he muttered. Memory Snape's voice cut through the room sharp as steel. "Because, Potter, some of us have standards." Young Harry scowled. "And some of us have lives." A flicker of something unreadable crossed Snape's face. Present Snape shifted beside Harry with a faint exhale that sounded suspiciously like exasperation at his past self, or at Harry's. "Do you notice it yet?" Snape asked. Harry frowned, watching closely. "Notice what?" "Observe." Young Harry stirred his cauldron, shoulders tense. And then, subtle, almost hidden, Memory Snape took a step closer. His posture didn't change, his expression didn't soften, but something in the angle of his stance, the direction of his gaze, shifted. Snape wasn't supervising the potion. He was watching Harry, not critically, not coldly, attentively, carefully. Harry's breath caught. "You weren't watching the cauldron at all." Snape's silence was telling. The memory continued. Young Harry's potion thickened into the correct consistency at last. He looked up, triumphant, ready to throw the achievement in Snape's face. But Memory Snape was already turning away, concealing something that flickered briefly across his face. Relief. Harry swallowed hard. "You were worried I'd get it wrong, that I'd hurt myself." Snape's shoulders stiffened. "You were reckless, dangerously so. Someone had to ensure you didn't blow up half the castle." Harry stepped closer to him. "That's not the whole truth." Snape's jaw clenched. The torchlight threw harsh lines across his features, but his eyes flickered with something uncertain, like a door half opened against his will. The memory shifted abruptly. Young Harry packed away his ingredients, clearly exhausted. For a moment, he braced himself on the table, expression tight with a kind of loneliness Harry recognized all too well. Memory Snape turned toward him, stopped, hesitated. Harry watched, astonished, as Snape took a single step forward, then another, almost as if he meant to speak to him, to say something real. But then he froze, swallowed hard, and turned away sharply, burying whatever emotion had stirred in a cloak of disapproval. Harry felt the ache of that moment, as though it belonged to both of them. "I never knew," Harry murmured. "I never saw any of this." "No," Snape said. "You could not have. I made every effort to ensure it. But why hide it? Why hide all of this from me?" At last, Snape turned to face him fully. "Because," he said softly, "I could not afford attachments. Not then. Not when every allegiance I held was a knife pressed against my own throat." Harry stared at him, the truth settling between them like falling embers. "But you did care." Snape inhaled sharply. The air quivered. "You cared about me," Harry said, voice steady, "long before I ever understood you." The shadows around Snape shifted restlessly, as though reacting to the intensity of his emotions. "I tried not to," Snape said, the words torn from him like threads pulled from old wounds. "I tried with every measure of discipline I possessed." "But you failed," Harry whispered. Snape's eyes flicked to his, dark and luminous. "Yes," Snape said, "I failed." Harry's chest tightened, warmth and sorrow, and something deeper curling together. He stepped closer, the air between them charged with fragile electricity. But the memory began to tremble. Shelves cracked, shadows surged. The younger version of Snape dissolved into smoke. Present Snape stiffened. It is trying to tear this memory apart. The bindings are unstable. Harry reached out instinctively. "Snape! What's causing it?" Snape didn't move. His voice dropped to a low murmur, rich with tension. "You are." Harry froze. "What?" "Your presence." Snape's eyes locked onto his, the rawness in them startling. "You are disrupting the boundaries of the memories. They respond to you, too strongly." The room shuddered violently. Bottles burst in cascades of coloured light. The stone floor split at their feet. Snape stepped forward, grasping Harry's forearm to steady both of them as the memory unravelled. The shock of touch was immediate. Hot, bright, undeniable. Snape sucked in a sharp breath, as if the contact startled him as much as Harry. But he didn't release him. "Hold on," Snape commanded. Harry tightened his grip. "I'm not letting go." Their eyes met, accidentally but unavoidably, and something passed between them, quick and fierce and terrifyingly real. The memory exploded in a rush of silver, and everything went dark. Darkness folded around them like a cloak pulled tight, thick and soundless. For a moment, Harry felt weightless, adrift in a space with no direction, no floor, no sky. Only the lingering warmth of Snape's grip anchored him, a single point of reality holding steady amid the collapsing void. Then, slowly, light seeped through the darkness. A soft glow at first, like the first flicker of dawn behind storm clouds. It grew, illuminating a narrow corridor lined with tall, arched windows. Moonlight spilled through the glass, bathing the stone floor in pale silver. Harry recognized the place instantly. The Hogwarts infirmary. But not as it existed now. This was the infirmary of the past, old and pristine, its ceiling draped with shadow as though holding its breath. Snape materialized beside him, cloak settling at his boots without a sound. His eyes flicked around, sharp and assessing. "This," he murmured, "is one of the oldest memories bound to my oath." Harry swallowed. "Connected to Dumbledore?" "No," Snape said quietly. "To you." Before Harry could respond, movement at the far end of the ward caught his attention. A small figure lay curled in one of the beds, blankets pulled up to a thin chin, hair sticking up in every direction. Young Harry, no older than 11, slept uneasily, face flushed from fever. The memory hit like a blow. Harry remembered this night only dimly. His first year, after Quirrell, after the stone, after surviving by some miracle, he still didn't quite understand. He recalled the stern voice of Madame Pomfrey, the faint smell of potions, the blur of exhaustion. What he didn't remember was Snape being there. Memory Snape stood half hidden in a doorway, arms at his sides, expression carved in dark lines of conflict. Torchlight cast flickering shadows across his features, making him look both older and younger than his years. Harry watched, stunned, as Snape stepped into the room. He moved silently to the bedside, his face unreadable, yet hollowed with something deeper than dislike or duty. For a moment, just a moment, he stared down at the sleeping child, his jaw tightening as though fighting an internal war. "He came every night," the real Snape said, voice near enough to draw a shiver down Harry's spine. Harry turned. "Every night?" "Yes." Snape's eyes were fixed on his younger self, with a strange mix of detachment and discomfort, to ensure that you remained alive long enough for the greater plans to unfold. But Harry saw it, saw that this wasn't simply about Dumbledore's plan. The tension in Snape's shoulders, the way his eyes lingered on the boy's too pale face. Concern. Deep, genuine concern. "Snape," Harry whispered. "You were worried." Snape stiffened immediately. "Your condition was unstable. The curse left by the Dark Lord." "Don't," Harry said softly. "Just don't hide behind explanations." Snape's lips thinned, but he didn't argue. The memory shifted, deepening. Memory Snape reached into his robes and withdrew a small vial filled with shimmering green liquid. He held it for a long moment, staring at it as though weighing something heavy. Then, hesitating only once, he uncorked it. Harry leaned closer, breath catching. "What is that?" "A stabilizing draught," Snape said. "Dangerous if misused, unnecessary for simple recovery." A pause. "But your condition was far from simple." Memory Snape poured the potion gently between young Harry's lips, his fingers steady, but his expression carved from worry he would never voice aloud. When he finished, he brushed the hair gently from Harry's forehead, the faintest touch, barely there, yet unmistakably tender. Harry felt his heart twist. "I don't understand," he murmured. "Why hide this memory?" Snape's gaze remained fixed on the scene, but his voice lowered, threaded with restraint. "Because it was unprofessional." Harry huffed a soft, incredulous laugh. "Try again." Snape's jaw tightened. "Because it revealed too much of what I had no right to feel." Harry felt warmth strike low and deep in his chest, subtle but undeniable. He stepped closer, standing a mere breath away from Snape. "You cared," he said again, softly but firmly. "You cared long before you admitted it to yourself." Snape's eyes flicked toward him, dark and conflicted. "Caring was a weakness I could not afford. It endangered everything." Harry met his gaze. "Yet you did." Snape turned away sharply, as if unable to hold the weight of the truth between them. The memory shifted again, flickering instability along the walls. The torches brightened, then dimmed. Shadows crawled like spilled ink. Snape exhaled. "The memory is collapsing. This boundary is fragile. Too fragile." "Because of me?" Harry asked. Snape did not answer at first. His silence was answer enough. Then, quietly, "Your emotions influence how the memories respond. They were built around you. They tether themselves to your reactions." Harry felt his cheeks warm. "I'm not doing anything." "You are doing quite a lot," Snape said sternly, though the edge in his voice was too thin, too hollow to be real annoyance. The infirmary cracked down the center, light pouring through in jagged lines. Snape grasped Harry's arm again, firm, steady, protective. The surge of warmth was immediate. "Stay close," Snape commanded. Harry stepped closer without hesitation, gripping his sleeve. "Always." Snape's breath hitched, a barely perceptible sound, but Harry felt it ripple through the bond forming between them, this strange and fragile connection the memories had awakened. The memory shattered, and the world pulled them into the next one. They landed abruptly in a dimly lit corridor, narrow, twisting, ancient. The smell of dust and stone filled the air. Torchlight flickered with an eerie green tint, casting their shadows long against the walls. Harry blinked, disoriented. "Where are we now?" Snape's expression darkened. One of the deepest memories I never intended to revisit. A choice I made in darkness. A choice that shaped every path that followed. Harry swallowed. Connected to the vow? No, Snape said quietly. Connected to you. The corridor stretched before them like a throat swallowing light. Snape stepped forward, the shadows retreating from his path. Harry followed, pulse quickening, aware, painfully aware, of the invisible thread that seemed to tie them together, growing stronger with every memory, every truth laid bare. Snape, Harry said softly as they walked, you know I'm not going to leave until this is finished, until you're free. Snape paused, turning his head just enough that Harry could see the flicker of emotion in his eyes, wariness, longing, and a fear so deep it almost looked like hope. You should not offer promises you do not understand, Snape murmured. Harry stepped closer, his voice steady and warm. Then help me understand. For the first time, Snape's expression softened. Not fully, not openly, but enough to shift something fundamental between them. Very well, he whispered. The corridor trembled, the air thickened, and the door to the next memory swung open with a groaning creak, revealing a truth Snape had buried deeper than any other. The door creaked open with the weight of years, spilling a wash of dim yellow light across the corridor. The air vibrated, thick as if steeped in old magic and older secrets. Harry stepped inside beside Snape, bracing for something terrible, another fragment of pain or sacrifice, another shadow carved from war. But it wasn't terrible, not at first. The room before them was small, circular, lined with shelves of dusty books. A fireplace crackled low in the corner, its flames green and gold. Papers littered a narrow table. Half-burned candles dripped wax down their stands. It was a private room, a hideaway. I've never seen this part of the castle, Harry murmured. You wouldn't have, Snape said. His voice held no sharpness this time, only a quiet relent. It was mine. A place Dumbledore allowed me to keep hidden. Harry scanned the room, feeling the intimacy of it settle through him like soft snowfall. There were details he never would have imagined. A polished raven quill worn at the nib from overuse. A threadbare armchair that looked comfortable despite its age. Neatly stacked potions, ingredients arranged with compulsive precision. And near the window, soft, worn edges curling at the corners, were several folded sheets of parchment. Harry stepped closer to them. His breath caught. Snape's handwriting. Not potion notes, not reports. Letters. Dozens of them. Snape, these are yours? Yes. Snape's expression tightened. And they are the reason this memory resisted every attempt to destroy it. Harry lifted one carefully, as though afraid the parchment would turn to dust. The ink was faded, but legible. Potter was reckless today, ignorant, insolent, hopelessly stubborn. He reminds me, painfully, endlessly, of everything I failed to protect. Still, he survives. Harry read the next. They do not see it. None of them. The boy walks into danger as though compelled. I watch because others will not. I ensure what I can. It is not enough, and I despise that it is not enough. His fingers trembled as he reached for a third. I cannot explain the tether forming between us. Perhaps it is residual magic. Perhaps something far more foolish. I am guarding him for Lily's sake. And yet, sometimes, I fear I am guarding him for my own. Harry felt the air leave his lungs. Slowly, he turned to Snape. You wrote these. I did. Snape's voice was low, as if speaking through a long-buried wound. And I sealed them away, permanently, or so I believed. Harry's voice cracked. Why? Why hide this part of you? Because I did not wish it to exist. Snape's gaze flickered with something raw. The Dark Lord read minds. Dumbledore saw too much. And you? He exhaled sharply, almost a whisper. You already bore more than was fair. My sentiment was an unnecessary burden. Harry stepped closer. The memory pulsed gently around them as though responding. This isn't a burden, Harry said. It's the truth. Snape's expression twisted, not in anger, but in fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of being known. Harry recognized it because he had worn that same look once, years ago, standing before people who expected him to be something impossible. Snape turned away. There is more. The room rippled. The fireplace brightened, and another scene unfolded over the first, like a second memory layered atop the room itself. Snape sat at the desk, slightly younger. His shoulders were slumped with exhaustion, his hand trembling as he dipped his quill into ink. He held a folded letter, the same letter Harry had found in Part 4's memory, announcing Harry's survival. Memory Snape pressed the heel of his hand against his eyes. His shoulders shook, not with sobs, not fully, but with the silent, unsteady rhythm of someone losing a battle he had fought too long. Real Snape's voice was barely audible. I was not prepared for your return, for your nearly dying, for the relief. Harry stepped beside him. It frightened you. Snape closed his eyes. It enraged me. The memory flickered. Tears, silent, furious, ran down the younger Snape's face, shining in the firelight. Harry's heart twisted. Without thinking, he reached out, not to the memory, but to the real Snape. His fingers brushed Snape's sleeve, light, tentative. Snape tensed violently, but he didn't pull away. Harry swallowed, forcing calm into his voice. You hid your grief. You hid your care. You hid all of this because you thought it made you weak. Snape's voice was a quiet blade. It did. No, Harry said, stepping closer. It made you human. Snape's eyes snapped to his, dark and brilliant with conflict. You do not understand. I understand more than you think. Harry's voice softened. Because I spent years pretending I didn't care, pretending I didn't feel things too deeply, pretending it was easier to be angry than afraid. Snape's breath hitched. The room trembled again, but not from collapsing magic, from emotion. The memory deepened. More letters appeared, ones Snape had never intended for anyone to read. He does not see his own worth. It terrifies me how easily he believes himself alone. Today, he smiled. It is absurd how it eased the weight of the day. The boy is infuriating, endlessly, profoundly infuriating. And yet, my thoughts return to him against my will. And then, most startling of all, if I were a different man, in a different life, with a different heart, perhaps I would allow myself to care openly. But I am not that man. I will never be that man. Harry's chest ached. Snape stood rigid, as though bracing for condemnation. Instead, Harry whispered, "You could be." Snape's eyes widened, a crack in the armor, fleeting yet unmistakable. "Do not," Snape whispered, voice strained. "Offer me illusions." Harry stepped close enough that their breath mingled in the still air. "I'm not." Silence spun out, fragile, electric. Then the memory shuddered. The edges of the room flickered. The letters dissolved like ash caught in wind. Snape stumbled slightly, gripping the edge of the table. Harry caught his arm instinctively. Their eyes met, No masks, no walls, only truth laid bare. Snape's voice was barely more than breath. "Why? Are you doing this?" "Because I want to," Harry said simply. "Because this matters. Because you matter." The words hit Snape like a spell. He flinched, then steadied, gaze burning with something he had locked away for too many years. The room cracked, light pouring in. Snape seized Harry's wrist tightly, far tighter than before. "The next memory," Snape said, voice trembling with warning and longing and fear, "is the one I could never face. Not living, not dead." Harry stepped closer, their foreheads nearly touching. "Then you won't face it alone." Snape inhaled sharply. The memory burst apart, and they fell together into the deepest truth Snape had ever buried. The world formed slowly this time, hesitant, as though resisting the unveiling of what lay at its core. For several long moments, Harry felt only cold wind brushing his cheeks, the low hum of distant magic vibrating beneath his feet. Then shapes emerged through the mist, pale and wavering. A forest. Not the forbidden forest, but something older, thick with towering trees, whose trunks glowed faintly with silver veins, as though they drank moonlight instead of water. The air felt ancient, steeped with quiet power. Harry shivered, not from the cold, but from a sense of foreboding that curled low in his stomach. Snape materialized beside him, solid, but tense in a way Harry had never seen. His cloak whipped around his ankles as wind swept through the clearing. Harry glanced at him. "Snape, what is this place?" Snape's jaw tightened. "The memory I spoke of." He paused, voice dropping into something almost brittle. "The one I wished never to see again." The mist parted, and Harry saw himself. Not the child in the infirmary, nor the boy in potions class, but the Harry he never realized Snape had watched. 15 years old, thin, exhausted, anger burning behind his eyes. He stumbled through the forest floor, wand in hand, shoulders shaking from a storm of emotions he had kept buried for too long. Harry's breath hitched. This was after Sirius died. Snape nodded, expression unreadable. "Yes." Harry looked again, heart aching for the raw grief he saw in his younger face. A grief so powerful, it nearly broke him. He remembered the night after Sirius fell through the veil, the anger, the reckless solitude, the sense of utter abandonment. He remembered running into the woods, simply to breathe without screaming. He did not remember Snape being there, but he was. Memory Snape emerged from the shadows like a ghost made flesh, face tight with something that was not hatred nor disdain, but helplessness. He paused at the edge of the clearing, watching Harry's younger form with an expression that looked carved from pain. Harry turned slowly to the real Snape. "You followed me?" "I found you," Snape said quietly, "hours after you fled the castle." Memory. Harry sank to his knees, fists clenched in the dirt. His voice broke into a ragged cry, wordless, guttural, ripped from the heart of someone who had lost everything. Harry felt tears sting his eyes. Snape did not look at him. "You were not designed for loss," he murmured. "You felt too deeply. You were drowning." Harry's voice wavered. "Why didn't I know you were there?" "Because I made certain you wouldn't." Snape's cloak rustled as he stepped forward, gaze fixed on his younger self. "You had been wounded enough without adding me to your torment." The memory continued. Young Harry curled forward, shoulders shaking with sobs he had not allowed anyone to hear. Snape approached with excruciating slowness, as if each step hurt him. He stopped a few feet away, breath trembling visibly in the cold night air. "Potter," Memory Snape said, voice low, stripped of its usual severity. "You must return to the castle." Harry's younger self did not respond. He didn't even seem to hear. Snape moved closer. Harry's eyes widened as he watched the memory unfold. Snape kneeling beside him, lowering himself to the ground with rigid care. For the first time Harry could remember, Snape looked utterly lost. "Potter," he said again, softer. "You are not alone." Harry felt the words like a pulse through the air, though he could see that his younger self did not hear them. Memory Snape hesitated, then, breathing as though bracing for pain, reached out. His hand hovered over Harry's shoulder, trembling slightly, uncertain. Harry's breath caught. Snape touched him, not harshly, not coldly, but with a kind of fragile, aching gentleness, as though terrified the boy might break under the weight of even the smallest touch. Harry's younger self did not look up, but his sobs slowed, just barely, as though some invisible warmth steadied him. Snape stayed like that for a long time, minutes stretching into something timeless, as wind whispered through the trees. The real Snape stood motionless beside Harry, gaze fixed on the scene with an expression that bordered on grief. "I never knew," Harry whispered, voice hoarse. "I never knew you found me." "You were not meant to know." Harry turned sharply. "Why?" Snape's answer came slowly, reluctantly. "Because you hated me. Because I made your life harder. Because I believed you would not welcome my concern. And because—" his voice thinned. "Because caring for you had already become dangerous." Harry stepped closer. "Dangerous for whom?" "For me," Snape said. The words sank deep. Memory Snape moved, shifting to better support the slumping boy. He kept his face turned away, but Harry saw the moment clearly. The moment Snape's hand lifted again, rising slowly toward Harry's cheek. He didn't touch him. He stopped mere inches away, fingers trembling with restraint. A single whispered word escaped him, nearly lost to the wind. "Please." The forest pulsed. Harry staggered as emotion crashed into him, something fierce, painful, and impossibly tender. Snape spoke again, voice taut. "I begged you not to break. You were the last piece of her left." His throat constricted around the words. "And then, somehow, you became something more." Harry's chest felt painfully tight. "Something more?" Snape looked away sharply, but not before Harry saw the truth flash through his eyes. "You were never just a task," Snape said. "Not after this night. Not after I saw what the world demanded of you. Not after I realized—" He stopped, voice cracking. Harry stepped in front of him, refusing to let him turn away. "Tell me." The forest trembled. Snape swallowed. "I realized," he said quietly, "that I could not watch you suffer without feeling it myself." Harry's breath left him in a rush. The memory wavered, the scene flickering like candlelight in a storm. Snape's fingers brushed Harry's wrist again, grounding him. "What happened afterward?" Harry asked softly. "After you found me?" Snape's eyes darkened. "I carried you back." The memory shifted. Young Harry asleep in Snape's arms, his features softened by exhaustion, grief momentarily stilled. Snape held him carefully, protectively, as though cradling something both fragile and precious. Harry stared, stunned. "You carried me?" "You could not walk." Snape's voice was flat with old pain. "And I refused to leave you." The forest flickered again, branches dissolving into silver strands. The memory strained. Cracks spidered through the air. Snape's grip on Harry's arm tightened sharply. This is the deepest memory tied to the oath, the most charged. If it collapses, then we hold it together, Harry said, stepping closer. Snape's eyes widened as Harry reached up, hesitated only once, then gently pressed his hand over Snape's where it gripped his sleeve. Heat surged between them, alive, startling, undeniable. The memory steadied. For a moment, everything was still. Forest, wind, moonlight, and the space between them hummed with something fragile and powerful. Snape whispered, "Harry." The sound of his name, gentle, almost reverent, shivered down Harry's spine. But before he could speak, the memory shattered into a storm of silver light, and they were pulled into the next layer of truth, deeper still, where the heart of Snape's bond to him waited in darkness. The world reformed, not with the gentleness of drifting mist, nor the gradual clarity of rising dawn, but with a force like a heartbeat pressed into the earth itself. Harry stumbled as his feet hit solid ground. Snape appeared beside him in the same instant, his cloak snapping like a raven's wing in a rising wind. The darkness around them peeled back. Stone arches emerged first, tall, ancient, carved with runes so old they pulsed with faint blue light. Then the walls appeared, built from massive blocks of granite, each etched with protective sigils. The air was cold, still, humming with magic that had never known sunlight. Harry drew a slow breath. "We're underground." "Yes," Snape said quietly. "Far beneath Hogwarts, a part of the castle most never learn exists." Harry turned a full circle, heart pounding. "What happened here?" Snape hesitated, not with reluctance, but with the solemnity of someone preparing to expose a wound long hidden beneath scar and armor. "This," he said, "is where the binding first took shape." Harry's pulse hammered. Binding? Snape gestured toward the center of the chamber, and Harry saw the memory come alive. There, alone within the rune-lit circle, knelt Snape. Not the hardened, battle-worn man Harry had come to know, but a version younger than the one in the forest memory. His body shook with tremors he fought to control. His wand lay shattered beside him. Blood matted his left sleeve. Harry inhaled sharply. "This was during the war." "Yes," Snape murmured. "My first year as Dumbledore's agent, after I made the vow." The memory flickered, shifting perspective. Harry saw himself, not in body, but as a spectral projection shaped from Snape's thoughts. A faint, translucent child of 11, wide-eyed and small, flickered into existence before the kneeling Snape. Not a memory, not a real event. A vision formed from Snape's own mind. "Is that me?" Harry whispered. Snape's face tightened. "A magical manifestation. At the time, the mind forms images to anchor a vow's purpose. It is not uncommon." Harry studied the kneeling Snape within the memory. His younger self, transparent, floating slightly, looked at him with a strange, quiet innocence. Snape knelt lower, head bowed. His voice, when he spoke, echoed sharply across the chamber. "I will protect the boy." The runes flared brighter. Through necessity. More light. Through duty. The walls shuddered. Through consequence. A sharp crack split the air. Harry flinched. Memory Snape's body jerked violently as a bolt of light shot through him, forcing magic into the vow he had sworn. He gasped, bracing a hand on the floor as if the weight of what he had promised crushed him. Harry felt his own breath falter, but the memory did not stop. The runes pulsed again, and Snape lifted his head. His voice dropped to something almost inaudible. Through will. Harry stared, stunned. Real Snape's expression was unreadable. "That was not part of the vow," he said softly. "Not required. Not asked." Harry turned sharply. "Then why say it?" Snape's eyes flickered with shadows. "Because I knew, even then, that I could not rely on duty alone. Because I feared I might one day hesitate if I did not commit to something deeper." Harry's heartbeat quickened. Something deeper? Snape looked at him. A rare, unguarded look that felt like the moment before lightning breaks the sky. Yes. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The memory continued, ignoring the quake. Snape, still kneeling within the rune circle, lifted his wand, broken as it was, and pressed the splintered tip to his own chest. The room crackled with magic. Harry's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" But Snape didn't answer, because the Snape in the memory had already begun to speak. "I bind part of my life," Memory Snape said, voice trembling, "to the boy's survival." Harry's stomach lurched. "You gave part of your life for me?" "Not exactly," Snape said, but Harry barely heard him. His memory self flickered again, the spectral child form sharpening, taking shape with clearer lines, as though the vow fed energy into the image. Snape pressed the wand harder to his chest. "I bind part of my will," he whispered, breath catching, "to the boy's life." The runes exploded in light, painful, brilliant, nearly blinding. Harry staggered backward. The magical force that erupted from the vow slammed into Memory Snape, arching his back, electrifying the air. His cry of pain echoed against the stone. The spectral image of Harry glowed brighter, tethered to Snape by thin threads of light. Harry could barely breathe. "You bound your will to mine." Snape's reply came low, hoarse. "I gave the vow something to anchor to, or it would have torn me apart." The memory slowed, dimmed, and then froze. Snape stepped forward, looking down at the younger version of himself still caught mid-cry. "That," he said quietly, "is where it began." Harry stared at him, the weight of the revelation pressing into his ribs. "You didn't just promise to protect me," Harry whispered. "You tied yourself to me." Snape did not deny it. "You bound part of your soul, your living will, to my life." Snape finally turned to him, expression raw enough to make Harry's heart stutter. "Yes." The chamber darkened as the memory started to unravel at the edges, cracks forming along the runes. The symbols sputtered, flickering like dying stars. Harry stepped closer. "Snape, is that why you're still here? Why you haven't passed on?" Snape closed his eyes for a brief moment, and Harry knew the answer before he spoke it. "Yes," Snape said, "because the vow never ended." Harry's breath hitched. "But Voldemort is gone. I'm safe. Why isn't it over?" Snape's voice broke on the faintest catch. "Because he swallowed, "did not specify that the vow was bound only to your safety." The chamber shuddered violently. Harry's heart pounded. "Then what did you bind it to?" Snape looked at him, really looked, as though he had never seen him clearly until this moment. And with devastating quiet, he said, "To you." The runes burst apart, shards of light erupting into the air. The ground split beneath them. Magic roared through the chamber like a storm unleashed, centuries of binding unraveling at once. Harry lunged, grabbing Snape's arm as the world shook. Snape's hand seized his in return, tight, instinctive, desperate. Their eyes locked in the chaos. Snape's voice was nearly lost beneath the thunder of shattering enchantments. "And it seems," he whispered, "that part of me cannot let go." The chamber collapsed into a blinding flood of silver, and Harry and Snape were pulled into the next memory, into the heart of the vow that refused to die. Light poured around them in a silvery cascade, too bright to shield against, too soft to resist. For a moment, Harry felt both weightless and anchored, held in a strange suspension between memory and magic. Snape's hand, still locked around Harry's wrist, was the only constant as the world around them reshaped again. When the light faded, they stood on a stone balcony overlooking Hogwarts. But not as it was now. Hogwarts glowed with a strange ethereal brilliance. The towers shimmered, the night sky burned silver instead of black, and the wind carried the low hum of ancient wards singing to themselves. It was the castle, but also not the castle. A reflection, a memory, and something else intertwined. "This is," Harry whispered, gazing at the spectral glow. "Beautiful." Snape's expression was tight, drawn. "This is not mere memory. This is the echo of what the vow anchored to." Harry turned slowly. "To me." Snape hesitated. A flicker of emotion crossed his face before he steadied it. "Yes." The balcony floor shimmered. Lines of silver threaded the stone beneath their feet, weaving into runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. Harry stepped closer to them, leaning down. The runes aligned into a pattern he recognized, slightly. "Is this—" Harry frowned. "Is this your magic?" Snape inclined his head. "My unconscious magic, the part of me that anchored itself to the living world." Harry's heart thudded. "You mean a piece of you, your will, your essence, has been tied to me all along?" "Yes," Snape replied, voice quiet but unwavering. "This place is the domain of that tether." Harry suddenly understood. This wasn't a pensive memory. It wasn't a recollection. This was a mental landscape formed from Snape's binding, a sanctuary and a prison. Snape walked toward the balcony's edge, cloak shivering in the magical wind. "This is the heart, the center, the truth I spent my life refusing to acknowledge." Harry followed him slowly. "Show me." Snape lifted his wand. The silver runes beneath them flared. The air rippled like disturbed water, and Harry saw it, saw himself. Not as a child, nor as a teenager in pain, but as he was now, grown, standing straight, looking out over the castle with a quiet strength Harry didn't always think he possessed. A lifelike projection stood in the center of the balcony, shimmering with faint silver light. Harry stared at it, stunned. "What is that?" Snape's voice was soft but heavy. "That is the anchor." Harry felt cold. "A projection of me." "A manifestation," Snape corrected. "Formed from memory, from observation, from sentiment." The word trembled, barely spoken. Harry stepped toward the projection, heart pounding. The illusion watched him with calm, patient eyes, eyes that glowed faintly green. Harry whispered, "This is how you see me." Snape flinched. Not obviously, not dramatically, but enough. Harry turned to him fully. "Snape." "That form," Snape said tightly, "is created from everything the vow touched. Every moment I watched over you. Every fear I carried. Every—" He stopped abruptly, breath shaking. Harry felt the pulse of truth in the air. Every feeling. Silence swelled between them, raw, heavy, trembling. "Do not make assumptions," Snape warned, though his voice lacked its usual bite. It was strained, thin, fraying. Harry stepped closer until their shadows intertwined. "I'm not assuming," he said softly. "I'm listening." The illusion of Harry shifted slightly, as though reacting to the real one. Its face softened. The expression held a quiet warmth, one Snape could never have allowed himself to show in life. Harry swallowed hard. "Snape, if this is the anchor, then this, whatever this is, must be the reason the vow hasn't ended." Snape exhaled slowly, almost painfully. "Yes, because the vow isn't tied to my safety anymore." "No," Snape whispered. "It is tied to everything I never allowed myself to admit." Harry felt words rising inside him, terrifying and tender, but he held them steady, careful. "Then tell me what keeps you here." Snape turned away sharply, gripping the stone railing. His knuckles whitened. "I cannot." Harry stepped beside him. "You have to. This memory is the key." Snape's breath trembled. "It is not simple. It never is." Snape closed his eyes. And then the anchor, the spectral Harry, spoke in Snape's voice. "I stayed for you." Harry's heart dropped. Snape spun, eyes wide with fury and panic. "Enough!" But the anchor continued. "I stayed because you became more than duty." Harry stared, breathless. Snape hissed, "Stop!" "I stayed because I cared beyond reason." Snape flinched backward as if struck. Harry felt every word like a spell cast directly into his chest. The projection stepped closer, locking eyes with the real Snape. "I stayed because I loved him." The world froze. Snape staggered, face drained of colour, every wall he had built in life shattering around him. Harry whispered, barely breathing, "Snape, is it true?" Snape stood rigid, trembling, not with fear, but with the unbearable weight of truth too long denied. He turned to Harry. His voice was cracked porcelain. "Yes." Harry's breath hitched. Snape continued, voice breaking open like a wound. "It was my greatest failure, my greatest weakness, and my greatest truth. I loved you." His eyes shone with something fierce and fragile. "I loved you, Harry, and that love bound me to life, even when my body died." Harry felt something inside him ignite, warmth and grief and impossible tenderness weaving together. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, until he stood directly before Snape. "Then why didn't you tell me sooner?" Snape laughed softly, a broken, wounded sound. "Because I believed you would despise me for it." Harry's chest tightened. "You saved me, over and over. You carried pain I never saw. You gave your life for me. And you think I could ever despise you?" Snape closed his eyes. "Harry," he whispered. Harry reached out, tentative but steady, and touched Snape's hand. The contact was electric. Snape inhaled sharply, not pulling away this time. The anchor pulsed with silver light, brighter, warmer, responding to the truth finally spoken aloud. The balcony trembled underfoot. Snape's eyes widened. "The vow. It's unraveling. My bindings—" Harry gripped his hand tighter. "Then stay with me." Snape's breath caught. "Harry, don't leave." Harry stepped closer, heart pounding. "Not now. Not after everything." Snape's face twisted. Agony, longing, hope all battling at once. But he squeezed Harry's hand once. Fierce, real. And the vow exploded into light. Silver fire engulfed them both. And Snape's fate hung suspended between freedom and the pull of a love he had never expected returned. The silver fire roared upward like a rising storm, swallowing the balcony, the sky, even the rune-lit stones beneath their feet. Harry felt the world tilt, felt magic twist around him in spiraling currents, felt Snape's fingers locked around his, like the last anchor in a storm determined to tear them both apart. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but light. Then, slowly, trembling, the world settled. The fire dimmed to a soft glow. The air warmed. Harry blinked as the brightness thinned enough for shapes to form again. They were no longer on the spectral balcony. They stood in a vast circular hall, silent, ancient, filled with drifting particles of light that floated like dust caught in sunlight. 6 pillars encircled the hall, each carved with swirling lines that bent and curled into forms Harry couldn't decipher. Everything shimmered faintly, as though made of half-remembered dreamstone. Snape exhaled sharply, releasing Harry's wrist, only to catch his breath and grip his shoulder instead. "This is impossible," Snape whispered. Harry steadied him. "Snape, what is this place?" Snape looked around with something like awe and dread entwined. "This is the cradle." "The what?" "The deepest root of the binding," Snape said. "A place that shouldn't exist outside of pure magical theory. A place formed only when a vow is made with impossible intensity." Harry's stomach tightened. Intensity? Snape's gaze flicked toward him, sharp, vulnerable. The vow responded to emotion. It created this as a vessel to hold what I refused to let myself confess. Harry swallowed. "The vow built this whole place. From your feelings?" Snape's face tightened with old shame. "I did not allow myself to feel them. So the vow felt them on my behalf and bound them here." The hall hummed, its light warm and steady. It felt safe, comforting, almost alive. Harry stepped forward, heart thudding. "So, if this is the heart of the vow, this is where we can end it." Snape did not move. "Or where it ends me." Harry turned sharply. "What do you mean?" Snape's eyes were dark pools of truth. "If we unravel the vow entirely, this..." He gestured around them. "This fragment of me may dissolve with it." Harry felt himself go cold. Dissolve? The pieces of my will bound to the vow exist only because the vow does. If the vow dies, so do they. Harry shook his head. "No, there has to be another way." "There is not." Snape's voice was steady, but thin. "This is why I never came here. This is why I feared this place. Because this is where I end." Harry stepped closer, fire building in his chest. "I didn't come this far to lose you." Snape's expression flickered, hope warring with disbelief. "Harry, you cannot save what is already dead." "I don't believe that," Harry said, his voice trembling with conviction. "Your will is here. Your magic is here. You are here. I see you. I hear you. I feel..." He stopped, breath catching. "I feel you. That means you're not gone." Snape looked away, jaw tight. "Do not offer false hope." "It isn't false." The hall shuddered softly. A column of light burst from the center, illuminating a raised platform that had not been there before. A circular stone table rose slowly out of the ground, engraved with the runes Harry had seen earlier. Snape inhaled sharply. The unbinding seal. Harry stepped toward it. "This is what we need to end the vow?" "Yes. And to free you." Snape paused. "Perhaps." Harry turned back. "Then let's do it." But Snape did not move. He stood absolutely still, stiff, unmoving, breath shallow. His eyes flicked to Harry's, then away, as though bracing for pain. Harry approached him slowly. "What's wrong?" Snape closed his eyes. "When the vow breaks, everything I have hidden, everything I have refused to feel, everything locked beneath years of discipline, it will come forward." Harry blinked, confused. "Snape, what do you mean?" Snape opened his eyes. They were unguarded, raw. "I mean," he said quietly, that I have loved you far more deeply than I allowed the world, or myself, to know." Harry's heart twisted painfully. Snape continued, voice cracking in the middle. "And when the vow breaks, that truth will not stay contained. It will strike the seal. It will reshape the magic, and the result may bind me to you permanently, or destroy what little of me remains." Harry felt the enormity of it settle on his shoulders, not as fear, but as something else, something achingly alive. He reached out. His fingers brushed Snape's jaw, tentative, gentle. Snape trembled. "Harry," he whispered, as though the name itself was a confession. Harry stepped closer until their foreheads nearly touched. "Snape, I'm not afraid." Snape's breath hitched softly. "You should be." "I'm not," Harry murmured. "Because I—" His voice faltered. His heart pounded, but he didn't look away. "Because I feel something too. Something I've been trying to understand since the moment you first spoke to me in these memories." Snape froze. Harry swallowed hard. "I don't want you to vanish. I don't want to lose you. Not after finally seeing you. Not the professor, not the spy, not the man carrying everyone's burdens alone. But you." The hall brightened, light gathering like held breath. Snape's voice was barely sound. "Harry, if the seal binds us—" "Then it binds us," Harry said, stepping into the last inch of space between them. "I'm not walking away." Snape's eyes closed, a shudder running through him. When he opened them, they glowed faintly with silver light, the magic of the vow responding to emotion he could no longer restrain. "Very well," Snape whispered. He stepped onto the platform. Harry stepped beside him. Together they placed their hands upon the unbinding seal. The runes flared, white, silver, violet. Magic spiraling upward and around them in a storm of living light. The hall shook. The air trembled with power. Snape's hand found Harry's once more, grip fierce, unyielding. The vow surged. The seal awakened. And a force older than Hogwarts, older than any spell Harry had ever known, pulled their magic and their hearts into its core. Light swallowed everything as the vow began to unravel or transform. The light struck like a tidal wave of magic, brilliant, scorching, alive. Harry clung to Snape's hand as the unbinding seal blazed beneath them, runes spiraling outward in rings of color that pulsed with impossible force. Every beam of light felt like a question, every tremor a demand. What do you choose? What do you bind? What do you release? Harry gritted his teeth, bracing his stance as the seal dragged more of Snape's power to the surface. Snape's body shuddered under the torrent, jaw locked, breath thin. Shadows flickered behind his eyes, shadows that slowly brightened into something startling and raw. Harry squeezed his hand. "Snape, stay with me." Snape's reply was barely a whisper, but steady. "I told you before, Potter. I do not intend to leave." The light surged, a column of white gold fire roaring up around them. Inside its glow, silver threads shot outward, weaving a sphere that enclosed them both. At its center, a shape began to form. A heart. Not anatomical, not metaphorical. A heart made of light, fragile, trembling, flickering like a candle flame, always on the verge of going out. Harry stared. "What is that?" Snape swallowed hard. His voice came rough, hollowed by awe and fear. "The call of the vow, the binding's essence. My will, what remains of it." Harry felt his breath stutter. "It's breaking apart." "Not breaking," Snape murmured. "Choosing." The heart began to split down the middle, cracks opening like lightning across its surface. Harry felt tugged by something ancient, vast, alive, pulling at his own magic, testing him. Snape's body jolted as threads of silver light wrapped around him, pulling at his form. His robes fluttered violently, dissolving at the edges like mist. "Harry, do not let go." Harry tightened his grip, voice fierce. "I won't." The cracks in the heart widened. A pulse burst outward, this one softer, warmer. It struck Harry's chest with a heat that was almost tender. He gasped at the contact, felt a burst of emotion that wasn't entirely his. Snape's voice trembled. "It is seeing us." Harry blinked, breath unsteady. Seeing what? Truth. The heart cracked again, and images spilled through the blinding light like reflections on water. Harry saw Snape holding him in the forest, voice breaking on that single whispered, "Please." He saw Snape kneeling within the rune circle, binding part of his will to a boy he barely knew but could not abandon. He saw letters never meant to be read, ink bleeding with fear and longing and impossible affection. He saw Snape dying in the shrieking shack, his gaze softening, not with hatred or regret, but with everything he had never been allowed to say. And the scenes twisted, shifted, revealing new images. Harry reaching for Snape in the memory forest. Harry whispering, "You matter." Harry touching Snape's jaw with trembling hands. Harry's own heart tightening every time Snape's walls cracked open. Harry realizing he had been falling long before he understood what he was falling into. The images dissolved. The light steadied. Snape stared at the heart with an expression Harry had never seen before. Awe, terror, and something like hope tangled together. "The vow knows," Snape whispered. "It knows that you." Harry's throat tightened. "That I care?" Snape's breath caught sharply. "That I feel something for you?" Harry stepped closer, pulling Snape with him until their shoulders brushed. "That I don't want you to disappear." The heart gave a soft pulse, silver rippling through its cracked surface like water. Harry drew a breath, steadying his voice, even as magic swirled violently around them. "It knows that I want you to stay." Snape closed his eyes, just for a heartbeat. When he opened them, they gleamed faintly with the same silver that lit the heart. "Harry, if the vow breaks cleanly, I will fade. If it binds, I may remain, but not as I was, not fully alive, not fully free." Harry stepped closer until their foreheads nearly touched. "Then let me choose too. I'm part of this binding. I want to be." Snape stared at him, breath shaking. "You do not understand what that means." "Then explain it to me." Snape swallowed. "The vow binds will to will, life to life. It could join our magic, permanently." Harry's breath hitched, but he didn't step back. He stepped closer. "I'm not afraid of that." Snape made a soft sound, half disbelief, half something deeper. "You should be, but I'm not." Harry lifted his hand and pressed it to Snape's chest above his heart. "I want you here." Snape's eyes closed with a shudder. "Harry!" The vow heart cracked again, this time down to its core. A flood of light burst from the fissure, engulfing them. The seal roared. Magic dragged at Snape's form, peeling away strands of his presence like smoke torn by wind. He trembled violently, staggering forward. Harry caught him, pulling him close, anchoring him with both arms. Snape clutched Harry's robes in return, fingers tightening with urgency. "I cannot hold." Yes, you can, Harry shouted over the rising storm of light. Snape's eyes met his, dark, fierce, burning with everything he had ever held back. The heart collapsed inward and then burst. A shockwave slammed into them, knocking Harry and Snape to their knees. Silver fire spiraled around their bodies, circling them like twin currents. The magic twisted, intertwined, fused. Harry felt something attach itself to him, warm, familiar, breathtaking. A presence that wasn't his, but belonged beside him, around him, within reach of him. Snape gasped, body arching as the tether pulled taut. Harry grabbed his face, bare hands, no wavering, and forced him to look at him. "Stay," he whispered fiercely. "Stay with me." Snape's breath broke. Then, a final pulse, a ringing quiet. The light dimmed. The hall steadied. Harry looked down. Snape was still there, still solid, still holding him. But his eyes glowed faintly with new magic, a silver thread of light flickering in their depths. Harry felt it before he understood it. A bond. Warm, living, fragile, and real. Snape lifted a trembling hand to Harry's cheek, as if afraid he might be touching a dream. "I remain," Snape whispered, voice raw. Harry leaned into the touch, closing his eyes. "Good," Snape swallowed. "But the binding has changed." Harry opened his eyes. "Changed into what?" Snape hesitated, then quietly, "Into something mutual." Harry's heart raced, but he didn't pull away. He only held Snape tighter as the cradle's light softened into a warm glow around them. For the first time, Snape was not bound by duty, but by choice, by connection, by something tender and terrifying and profoundly alive. The vow was broken. Something new had taken its place, something neither of them fully understood. Yet neither wished to escape. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The cradle grew still around them, its warm silver haze hovering like a living breath. Harry felt Snape's presence not only beside him, not only in the way their hands remained clasped, but also deeper, woven into the air, into the faint hum of lingering magic. A quiet bond thrummed between them, neither oppressive nor forceful, but steady and warm. A bond chosen, not imposed. Snape drew a slow breath, the faint glow in his eyes dimming to a soft shimmer. He looked almost dazed, as if unable to believe the magic hadn't swallowed him whole. "Harry," Snape murmured, the name spoken with a hesitant unfamiliarity, as if using it meant stepping into a world he wasn't certain he had the right to touch. "You have bound yourself to something you do not fully comprehend." Harry's grip tightened. "Then teach me. Explain it. I'm not afraid of what we've become." Snape's expression flickered, something like disbelief, relief, and a quiet fear intertwined. "I am no longer what I was. I am diminished." He paused. "A fragment, sustained by magic and your will." Harry shook his head firmly. "No, you're here. That's what matters." Snape's gaze collapsed under the weight of those words. A faint tremor ran through him, as if he were absorbing a truth too heavy to bear all at once. The room brightened, the cradle responding to their closeness. Silver light rippled through the pillars and across the engraved floor. The chamber itself seemed to breathe, a heartbeat of magic pulsing outward toward the exit that had not existed until now. A doorway shaped itself from nothing, carved from pure silver light. Snape turned to it, brows drawn. "The cradle releases us." Harry nodded. "Then let's go." But Snape didn't move. Not immediately. His hand remained in Harry's. His eyes stayed fixed on the doorway, but his expression was distant, haunted. "Harry," Snape said at last, voice low, "this bond, what you feel now, what I feel now, may grow or may fade. It is not an enchantment. It is choice, one that requires time." Harry stepped closer until their shoulders brushed. "I'm not asking for an answer you're not ready to give." Snape's eyes softened, shadows melting into something more open. "You speak as though you understand what you are asking of me." "I do," Harry whispered. "I'm asking you to live, with me or beside me, in whichever way you choose. I'm not setting terms." Snape shut his eyes briefly, as if steadying himself. "You offer too much." "Then take only what you can," Harry murmured. "The rest can come slowly." For the first time, Snape allowed the faintest ghost of a smile, small, nearly invisible, but genuine. "You always were remarkably stubborn." Harry grinned. "You say that like it's a flaw." "It is." Snape's voice dipped softer. "And a strength." The cradle shimmered again, urging them forward. Snape finally stepped toward the doorway. Harry followed, their hands still joined. As they crossed the threshold, silver light rippled outward, soft and warm, washing over them. The ancient chamber dissolved behind them, its purpose complete. Its magic faded into a gentle echo, like the last note of a song lingering in the air. Then, they were standing in the headmaster's office. The fire crackled low. Dust motes drifted through sleepy morning light. The portraits of former headmasters stirred in their frames, blinking awake. McGonagall, seated at her desk, jolted upright so abruptly her spectacles nearly slipped off. "Merlin's beard! Harry, you've been gone for—" She froze. Her eyes widened. "Severus?" Snape stood beside Harry, no longer translucent, no longer ghostly, but not fully corporeal either. His form was solid enough to cast a shadow, to be seen and heard, yet tinged with the faint glow of the cradle's magic. McGonagall rose slowly, her hand trembling. "Impossible." "Not impossible," Snape said, voice steady. "Merely improbable." Harry could have laughed at the stunned expression on her face if the moment hadn't been so impossibly fragile. "How?" McGonagall breathed. "Severus, this defies every principle of magical theory." "Evidently," Snape replied dryly. Harry stepped forward. "He's here, because he wasn't ready to go, because magic allowed it, because—" He hesitated, pulse quickening. "Because of the vow, and what lay beneath it." McGonagall looked sharply at Snape, then at Harry, reading far more than either had said aloud. Her eyes softened, not with pity, but with a solemn understanding. "I see," she murmured. Snape straightened, the familiar rigidity returning to his posture, though softened at the edges. "I am tied to this world now, in part, by will and by magic older than Hogwarts. I will need time to adapt." McGonagall nodded slowly. "Then you will have it, both of you." She stepped back to give them space. Snape glanced at Harry, something unreadable flickering across his face. "Potter, Harry, this existence is unstable. I may not remain in this form. I may shift, fade, strengthen. I cannot predict it." Harry stepped closer. "You won't face any of it alone." Snape's breath caught, but he did not argue. They left the headmaster's office together. Outside, Hogwarts was washed with soft morning gold. Students trickled into the corridors in sleepy streams, unaware of the impossible shift in the castle's magic. Snape's steps were soundless, but his presence beside Harry was solid, real in a way that made Harry's chest ache with gratitude. They walked in companionable silence until they reached an empty balcony overlooking the grounds. The air was cool and crisp. Harry turned to him. "Snape, what happens now?" Snape looked out over the horizon. "Now, I learn how to exist again." Harry's voice softened. "And me?" Snape's eyes met his, quiet, steady, no longer haunted. "You," Snape said, "choose whether to walk beside me." Harry smiled gently. "I already have." Snape inhaled slowly, as though taking in the truth of that. "Then, we begin from here." He hesitated. Then, carefully, he rested his hand against Harry's shoulder. It was not a grand gesture, not an answer to everything, but it was something new, something real. Harry covered Snape's hand with his own. "We'll figure it out, one day at a time." Snape nodded, the faint silver glow in his eyes softening. "Very well," he murmured. "One day." The sun rose higher, casting warm light over them both. A new beginning, quiet, tentative, fragile, but filled with possibility, unfolded in that soft golden glow. For the first time, Snape did not walk ahead, nor behind, but beside Harry. And together they stepped forward, into a future unbound by loss, shaped instead by choice, by truth, and by the strange, steady magic that had brought them back to each other.